Hi, I'm Maurice. Welcome to My Farmer is My Friend on the Visibility Spectrum. The relationship between alternative agriculture, alt-ag, and artificial intelligence is evolving so rapidly that most farmers are wondering what to do next, if anything. And it might surprise you, but in comparison to other occupations, farmers are among the most likely to die by self-harm. And when asked, they indicate that government policy is the main reason. It's a tragic secret and needs to be addressed immediately. The farming community has a suicide rate 3.5 times higher than the general population. So promoters and educators need to be careful and not make irresponsible promises they can't possibly keep. AI is already playing a major role and having considerable impact, both good and bad. Before I get to AI, though, I want to sincerely congratulate and offer a bit of friendly insider insight to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was recently appointed by President Trump as Secretary of Health and Human Services. RFK Jr. recently interviewed Joel Salatin, aka the Lunatic Farmer. I like Joel too and think he's a great choice as an advisor, but keep in mind that Joel has his perspective and bias, like the rest of us. Just because Joel's polyface farm has been so successful and financially lucrative does not necessarily mean that his proven and brilliant processes can be replicated by farmers in other areas. Polyface Farm works in part because it's on the eastern seaboard with a population of almost 120 million high-income consumers. It's only a 6-hour drive to New York City, and by Joel's admission, he focuses on only a 4-hour radius from his farm, which gives you an idea of the high market density. In comparison, my area on the West Coast, Regen farmers drive 9 hours one way every weekend to sell at their farmers markets. And they tell me it's hard, but lucrative because they connect directly with customers. One of the other big secrets, and a really good one, is that Regen food always sells at premium prices. Here's the marketing and partnership manager for one of the longest running private permaculture and Regen teaching academies in North America. We graduated thousands of students over more than a decade, well over more than a decade. So I know what farmers are capable of, and that most are burned out and struggling financially and emotionally. My family on both sides goes back many generations as farmers. I grew up on a homestead, plus my dad owned 2 farms. I also had a homestead of my own. Joel told RFK Jr.'s audience that CSA, customer-supported agriculture, is the ideal model for all farmers. And he's partially right, but most farmers are not capable of setting up a sophisticated online shopping network. And I'll argue that point until the cows come home. I've done that. I created sales models like that almost 15 years ago for the food industry. So I also know that shipping is incredibly challenging and expensive to develop and maintain. And don't get me ramped up on the carbon footprint. Once a shipping system is running without hiccups, well, it's great. But getting it to that point bankrupts a lot of independent farmers before they sell even 1 carrot. Joel warned RFK Jr.'s audience that farmers' markets are corrupt. And he's right, and not worth the effort. And he's right that some are less than honest, but it's still a faster and much more cost-effective option for struggling independent farmers than anything else, and for a couple of reasons. The most important being that the human connection that farmers cultivate with their customers Well, it's a powerful and irreplaceable touch point that can't be achieved any other way. Considering that we trust our family and friends before any corporation and CEO, my farmer is my friend is the critical message in the equation. I'm a writer and geek too, like Joel, but I've had a gazillion times more success developing and managing massive audiences than any farmer in alt-ag has ever done so far. My projects, well, they sold out venues like the 65,000-seat Houston Live Show and Rodeo several times, and that's just for starters. If we remove the direct human connection to food at farmers' markets, it won't be long before independent farmers are once again riding the same swayback nag and following behind large corporations who are trying to jam nutrition into a happy Thanksgiving turkey pill. Yum. Hope it comes with cranberry sauce, dipping sauce. If we really want to achieve better health through food, it's absolutely necessary for independent farmers to regularly connect with consumers at farmers markets. If farmers markets in Joel Salatin's area, if they're as corrupt as he claims, and I'm not doubting him, I've managed projects in that area, clean the markets up. But please don't put all farmers markets across the country in the same bushel of rotten Virginia apples. It's misleading. It is ludicrous to throw the farmer's market baby out with the corrupt bathwater. Not to mention insanely expensive. Who's going to pay for that? Yeah, I agree that it's challenging to clean up big corporations. I've done that. But in comparison, it's child's play to clean up a corrupt farmer's market. Most community leaders only need a little push and direction to do the right thing. All it takes is one honest and strong farmer at each farmer's market to lead the way, just one, and others will quickly fall in when they see financial gain. Guaranteed. That's how it works. Joel, the lunatic farmer, is touting technology as the great connector, and he's kind of right, but we need to back up a little bit and instead invest time developing human connections at farmers markets. This is about food. Tech can get you to the front of the door, but AI bots can't make a genuine human connection. At least not yet. And did you know who else goes to farmers markets? Politicians go to the grandstand, and when they do, I often see smart farmers backing them into a corner because they're easy targets in that environment. I teach farmers how to do that too. As an experienced social activist, I've taught many people how to effectively voice their opinions, and it's what Joel should also be promoting. Not all farmers have Joel's capital. Let's please try to stay realistic so struggling farmers and food consumers don't end up going from the frying pan into the fire. For independent farmers, knowing how technology connects their community will go a long way to helping them survive and thrive. And if you think farmers already know how to connect effectively, you'd be wrong. I know because I educate and train them. Plus, transparency will also help food consumers understand an agricultural process that is scientifically proven to be better than organic, way better than organic, which could be the decade's biggest dirty little farming secret. It's a hard pill to swallow for some, but permaculture and regen ag are better than organic by a country mile, and I'll argue that point into the ground too. Alt-ag processes like permaculture and regenerative agriculture, well, they've languished for such a long period in farmers' minds and fields that many are now wary of and questioning the claims made by scientists and engineers. The reality is that alt-ag education is purposely made unnecessarily complicated to justify charging students higher tuitions, which is criminal. Farmers and gardeners don't need to know everything all at once. Life it's already complicated enough. Give them a break. If you've been duped by this sales tactic and or also led to believe that there is an active movement, I mean, you should demand your money back, or at least part of it. The solution to this unchecked chaos is simplicity and KOD, knowledge on demand. Most farmers don't realize that predatory tech geeks who are less than ethical and focused on the money grab and profit are sacrificing the growth of permaculture and regenerative movements for their personal wealth. They do not exhibit genuine concern for the food supply chain or the health of soil. Thankfully though, they're relatively easy to identify with a couple of simple questions. That so far, unfortunately, very few people are asking. If you're really, really interested in moving the movement, ask me and I'll show you how to separate the chaff from the wheat with these permaculture posers. Cy Coben wrote decades ago that everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. It's about greed. Greed is causing considerable negative impact on food consumers, irrespective of mainstream acceptance of alternative agriculture. The complexity and chaos that hustlers purposely generate hurts everyone who is trying to improve the food network, including and especially food buyers like you and I, and your friends and family and neighbors. Most independent farmers are struggling more today than at any other time in current history. They can no longer afford to languish alongside a painfully slow, stalled movement that after almost 50 long years is still not even close to the tipping point on the mainstream adoption curve. Farmers feel like they've done more than their part and that it's now up to the movement to pull its weight. There was a very brief online uptick during COVID lockdown when governments spent millions heavily promoting that we should all grow our own food, even if we lived in a condo or apartment. And many people jumped on board simply out of fear. But when the frenzy flatlined, amateur fair weather educators, with a tip of the hat, moved on to find greener pastures and higher profit. Alt-Ag's mostly mythical movement, which has been in free fall for about a decade, is now stalled at the independent farmer level. Meanwhile, factory farms still receive massive financial support through subsidies. And to add insult to injury, factory farmers help write the regen laws and regulations that independent farmers will be forced to follow. How's that for a solid kick in the prairie oysters? Governments rarely, if ever, take the suggestions of independent farmers seriously. And until they do, nothing will change. If you ask an independent farmer what soft lobbying is, they don't have a clue. And they also don't know that farmers' markets are perfect venues to soft lobby. I know that too because I've produced massive events at almost every state fair in the country, including several times at one of the biggest in Minnesota. Forward-thinking independent permaculture and regen farmers who have made expensive investments at considerable risk over many years to develop alt-ag, well, they're now wondering when consumers will catch up, if ever. Where are the customers? If they're asking if permaculture is so good, why isn't regen-grown food featured at our local grocer? Consumers don't know that it's a big corporation and political roadblock, so they blame the science and farmers. Consumers have heard about it for over a decade, but they're now suffering from visibility exhaustion because it has taken so long to go past the mainstream tipping point. They're now confused and skeptical, especially because it's so expensive and sold at premium prices, which is the exact opposite of what consumers were promised and what they're expecting. Through extensive research, we know that there are not many organizations that actually help grow the alt-ag movement. Most do very little, if anything, to increase the visibility of the movement in any appreciable manner. Appreciable. But if you follow their echo chamber social media feeds, you'd think they were financing and leading the entire charge. You have to be careful of these people. One of the most popular permaculture pioneers was recently punished for using spam lists, and no one blinked. The industry simply looked the other way. Before we clean up corruption on the farmers' market side of the fence, we need to take a serious look at our own backyards. Aggressive tech business profiteers, well, they're watching closely and banking on a relatively small cohort of independent farmers and social activists to do all the heavy lifting so hustlers can profit off of their labor. We need to immediately target these virtual wolves in sheep's clothing. They need to be eradicated today. These predators, they know that permaculture educators who made a killing during the lockdown are now abandoning students and moving to greener regenerative pastures where they can continue to generate high profit. Abandoned students are easy targets for tech predators like this. So much for ethics and the 12 principles of permaculture, about doing no harm. We're not even capable of policing ourselves. Confused graduates are now standing in the field wondering what just happened and fearfully asking, quietly though, what's next? What's next? Students didn't see that coming when they shelled out $2,000 plus as much in extras for a permaculture course they could get for free if they looked. Predation like that is killing the growth and credibility of the movement and harming our reputation in the mainstream. And if you don't think reporters notice this, you're naive. Disenchanted alt-ag students are being quietly rotated to the back 40 to fend for themselves, which is already having a significant detrimental trickle-down effect on consumer trust and adoption. The movement lost a ton of momentum and credibility almost overnight. It further fractured the market, making it even weaker, which is what happens when big players quietly close shop and move on. They leave big holes and cause collateral damage that's hard to see. Universities over the last 2 years now control the market for educating students to become alt-ag teachers at a granular community level. And this transition gutted private teachers and academies that relied on teach-the-teacher revenue. Unlike universities, private academies aren't set up to offer accreditation, which is mandatory for municipalities scrambling to develop urban community gardens that are designed to feed hungry kids and seniors every single day. Universities and colleges edged private academies to the sidelines, and they now control this valuable sector. And we all know that universities don't do free. As a result, and in response, private educators cannibalize themselves and transition to offering free courses, which is where agriculture knowledge should be to begin with, and thankfully where it's going, although unfortunately much too slowly. We have to pick up the pace. I promised to address AI. Well, here's the insider view you need today. AI is very rapidly moving into the educational sector, making it possible for farmers and growers of all types to purchase information on demand at micro fees, KOD, knowledge on demand. All farmers and even urban gardeners will soon be able to affordably access alt-ag knowledge in real time in the field or home garden exactly when they need it through their phones and satellite feeds connected to IoT-enhanced farm machinery. It's coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming. Permaculture and regenerative agriculture, well, unfortunately, they're greenwash growing at a fast rate, but it's not in the direction independent farmers and food consumers expected, and that society needs in order to be healthy again. Thanks for watching. I'm Maurice. Be well.